We were relatively poor. We weren't poor, but we were somewhat poor. But I never grew up being told or thinking that I was poor. My mother always said we were rich. Why was that? Because we had, just outside of our home, this marvelous gift of public land. We had the Ponderay National Forest. We had the wild Columbia River, then still wild in the upper stretch of it. We had the marvelous mountains of Montana, where I learned to fish with my grandfather. We had all this wonderful endowment. We had the Olympic National Park, America's rainforest, our only real temperate rainforest. And I felt rich. We camped under these musty canvas tents. I can still smell the damn thing, actually. But we had this domain, our American birthright, what we get as citizens. It's on the deed of citizenship when you're born here. That is ownership of that public land, all that wild public land. Wendell Berry, whom I admire, great author and essayist, said, "You can't know who you are if you don't know where you are." So a big part of my writing has been trying to figure out the where you are question. And let me just go a little bit in where we are in the West in this moment. We still live in the most dynamic and changing region of the United States. We live in a place where we project our dreams, where we experiment with new ways of living continuously. That's part of what you're doing here in South Bay, is experimenting, trying to figure out how man and nature can coexist in a way. For all of the open space that we do have, all the public land I identified that are endowment as citizens here, we are the most urban place in the United States. The census defines urban as clusters of people, 5,000 people or more. We are more urban in the West. Utah is more urban than upstate New York. Because we had that public land, we are more clustered in urban areas. Generally, we know from the polls and surveys that have done, the urban areas of the West, which does define us, we're more educated. We have a higher percentage of people with advanced degrees. Now, I'm talking about what the demographers call these knowledge cities, the Portlands and Palo Altos, the Seattles and Tucsons, the Boulders, and other areas that draw young people who want to go, who can go anywhere they want to in America and want to go where there's a cluster of similar smart people. Also, on the whole, and I always find this fascinating, pollsters find that Westerners tell them that they are happier, that they feel healthier. And I think maybe that's why we just think we're smarter than everyone else, because we're happier and healthier. Now remember, though, Stegner, whom I revered, said the West is the native ground of hope, that connection to place where you want to save it because it has value to your life, not just an intellectual attachment. Now, President Obama has just named as his new Interior Secretary a woman named Sally Jewell. She hasn't been confirmed yet, but she will. She is a daughter of the West by way of her British-born father, who moved to Seattle when they were very young, and she spent the last 15 or so years as the head of REI, which you know is Recreational Equipment, Inc., the largest consumer co-op in the United States. And Sally, I've gotten to know her a little bit over the years, well before she got to this prominence. I was certainly happy to see Obama choose her to be the next Interior Secretary. But one of the things we started talking about a few years ago when I was doing a dinner with her was this idea of nature deficit disorder and young people, how we get young people to think that a tree is not something that appears as an app, to think that a stream is not something that's only in 3D when it's on a screen. And so she started something at REI, which has been fairly successful. She started a very good program where they pulled kids out of the city of all age and class groups, not just inner city kids of one race or the other, but kids from the other neighborhoods as well, and took them to Mount Rainier for a few days on behalf of REI. And they had all these programs that almost forcefully introduced people to nature. And she told a number of these amazing stories. And I think that's one of the great challenges we face. We have to get the generation that's younger than us, the generation that's born now to 25, that does suffer from nature deficit disorder, that doesn't know the hard battles that went to give them this open space, to introduce them to these places so they can have some attachment. I heard a wonderful line long ago from the poet Gary Snyder about the West. And he said, the duty of those of us who love this place in all its forms is very simple. And it's actually similar to something I heard in Italy as well when I was living there. He said it very simply. He said, find your place, dig in, and defend it, which I thought really nicely summarized what you're doing here and what we have to do here.